Welcome to the FNDN Series, your deep dive into startup compensation with industry leaders from across the startup world. Join me, Matt McFarlane, a people operations leader turned compensation specialist, as we uncover the strategies and practices driving success in tech startups around the world. Hear insights from heads of people, founders, and experts as we explore how to build robust compensation frameworks that not only fuel growth and retention, but do so in the dynamic startup environment that we all know and love. Let's get into it. So it's so amazing to have you on the show. I'd love you to spend a few seconds just for those who aren't familiar with you, introducing yourself, who you are, where you're from, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you for having me, Matt. I definitely have followed you for a long time and always loved everything. A lot of alignment in what you say around compensation and how you approach it. So this is well-timed to have this conversation. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarika Lamont. I am the Vice President of People and Culture at Vidyard. Vidyard is a AI-enabled go-to-market tool, not just for sales, so sort of like end-to-end from marketing, sales. Yes, we have a little bit of everything, but we have a lot in the ways of like video messaging, video hosting, video-based follow-ups, et cetera. And so Vidyard's based in Canada, but I am actually based in Virginia in the US, about 45 minutes outside of DC. So I work for a predominantly Canadian company, which has been a very interesting experience. I've been here for over 2.5 years. I lead all things people and culture and all the things that sit underneath that. And now I also lead AI and automation enablement and innovation across the company. So a lot of really cool things going on in that world. So it's not just specific to what we're doing on the people side as it relates to AI tooling, but also how are we looking at accelerating execution through operational discipline by way of like AI and automation. So really, really interesting time right now in the role for sure.
All right. So in today's episode, I am wanting to talk about the toughest pay conversations and how to actually have them. I think, if there's one thing I know about compensation, it is that it is rife with compromise. You're never going to get the best answer that suits everybody and makes everybody happy. You're always having to make compromises. So in some ways. So today I want to talk about what those conversations are and how to actually approach them. So let's dive right in. What's the biggest one? What's the gnarliest kind of meanest question that comes to mind for you when you think about the dicey kind of pay combos?
I know I've had some pretty gnarly ones, and of course I'm trying to think about them now, but there's like definitely a couple that come to mind that like maybe they're not the gnarliest I've ever heard, but they're ones that are always there. They're challenging because they're very individualistic.
Yeah.
I think one that I always, the hard one that I've had to give, unfortunately, when the business, when business isn't like booming is, like you're not getting a raise. Like, right. But you're saying that to someone that might be a really strong performer. And you just know that you're in a moment in time in this business that you can't afford it. Like the budget isn't there. You can't afford it. I would say that's probably it's always the most emotional conversations for me because I have a hard time telling people no. And when I know that they've worked so hard and and I think that's probably, I guess that's hard from a different perspective. Right. And though usually like where I try to go with these conversations or what I try to help our managers do in these conversations is sort of thinking through like how to lay out that type of a conversation. I think you always have to start with like leading with just like recognition, right? Like recognizing the work that they have done and the impact that they have made. And not like, and I wouldn't say like don't over deliver that either. Like you got to find the balance
don't
there
like
because
like,
oh my gosh, you're the most amazing ever. And I'm so like, that makes it. It's really hard. So I think I want to acknowledge the work that you've done, like your contributions do matter and they have made an impact in like XYZ way. But then I think like tying it back to like, I think more what feels more pertinent to the moment that at least I'm in right now is like, but we're also a moment in time in this business where we just don't have like a budget. We don't have a big budget for, big raises or in some cases raises at all. And so, let me talk a little bit about that. Like, let me talk about, where the business is at, why this is happening, talk about other ways that we have been able to invest and pour into you in your role, giving you these opportunities. And let me talk about what the next steps are. Like, how do we get you there? What would a growth plan look like? How will I commit as a leader or as a mentor and get you there? It doesn't always work great, but that's probably been the hardest for me in terms of like, or there's variations to that. There's like, we're only prioritizing the top, 15, 20% of our, of people that have, the impact that they've made. And like, this could be someone that's achieving expectations and doing a good job. And I still want them here, but they're not the highest performer. And so like, how do I then articulate that distinction and differentiation? And so then that's where I go back to like the competencies that we've laid out. I try to go back to like outcomes and impact versus just a list of tasks of things that they've done. And I try to take that back to like measurable impact to the business or lack thereof, right? Like, yes, you've done a lot of really great things, but it hasn't necessarily had the impact that we've hoped that it would have, right? So then what is my commitment to you or how will I help you get there and what timeline? I think that's kind of one that I've worked that to me is always a hard one.
Do you find
I'm interested, I'm interested in your take on that or like your hard question.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like a lot of people, I think unfortunately cash gets relied on a lot for the reward and recognition piece. And I think the thing that you sort of stepped off with there to start with is like just sitting someone down and having a conversation with them to say, hey, like, I can't tell you how like impressed I am and how much you've accomplished this year. Like you literally are in the top, and if you aren't giving high performance to pay increase, if you're saying to them, you are, a top 5 or 10% employee in terms of the impact you're having, it's like, don't diminish the impact that can have for somebody. And I mean, sure, it's not a raise. And I think there's a whole lot of work, when the business's financial circumstances aren't going to be able to meet people's expectations. There's a whole lot of work in managing those expectations going into a compensation cycle. But, don't underestimate the impact that it can have on someone's intrinsic motivation to say like, you are friggin' nailing it, right? Like you're doing so great. And here's what, down the path, it might be a promotion or here's these other ways in which I can see opportunities for you and things like that. But just continuing to reinforce for them that they are having this incredible impact and that it is heads and shoulders above others. Because I think that for me is where the risk is, especially if they're not seeing pays. They're going, well, I'm kind of, I feel like I'm being treated the same as everybody else when I know that I'm not. And you don't want to have them pull back because they're like, well, there's no incentive to keep at the same level and the same benchmark as what I'm doing, right? So I think, don't underestimate the power of the words, right? And just, those thank yous and the recognitions can be so valuable and impactful.
But you made a really good point in that this shouldn't, there's a lot of lead up to having to have that conversation and a lot of not just managing expectations, but also making sure that you're being really vocal and articulate about someone's impact and recognizing their efforts all the time, not just at a time that you're having a review conversation or a pay, or lack thereof conversation. And as a manager and a leader, or a mentor, it is my responsibility to pour into my people and their development. Now, I am pretty vocal about your career is your responsibility. You own your career and its development. The company doesn't own your development and your manager doesn't own your development. But what is our responsibility is supporting you and guiding you and giving you feedback and curating, opportunities, stretch opportunities or other opportunities for you to flex your muscles in those areas where you have identified that I need to build these skills. I need to develop in these areas. I need for people to lean in and do the work to understand what do you need to be doing in your role. I will give you feedback, but I also think there's something to be said about you also doing the work to understand your craft and what you need to be doing to get to that next level and articulating that to me so that then I know what that roadmap looks like and I'm going to take that journey with you. I give you an example, I don't own IT and security in my organization, but I have a really amazing IT security leader. And he's been very articulate to me and vocal about where he desires to be in his growth path. And I said, okay, great. And he's like, I love talking to you. You're so like, you give me such great feedback because we work cross-functionally together so much. I would love for you to be like a mentor to me. And I said, great. But do you know what that means? Because like, I'm pretty ruthless sometimes on how and my feedback, and I'm pretty direct. And so like, but I do it because I do it because I care about you. And if you tell me that you want to get somewhere, but just also understand, like, I don't know IT and security. So what I'm asking of you is you do your homework and tell me what does it mean to get to that level? Like, you want to be a director, you want to be a VP, you want to be a whatever. I need you to do the work to define what that means, because I don't know that might not be my functional area. And so help me help you. And it's your career. So you got to guide me on where you want to go, and I will help you get there. I will provide the feedback. I will coach. I will lean in and learn with you, and to be able to provide another another leader that's just seeing you from a different perspective and to help you, because I might be giving you feedback on a different perspective than maybe your direct manager. But that was like an example, like I might not know your functional area. And so like I could be doing you a disservice. But again, that means a lot. That means a lot to people. And actually he was really great in being like, it's not about money at the end of the day to me about everything, Sarika. Like, the fact that you're even willing to spend the time to give me feedback. And I wrote up a whole 2-page document on my own observations of his strengths and his development opportunities. Now I will tell you this, getting back to AI, because I would tie everything back to AI, how you use it as a superpower. I took a bunch of notes, talking to his manager, talking to our CTO, talking to people that work with him, talking to my team, all the people. And I just like data dumped a bunch of notes off the cuff in a Google Doc. I took that Google Doc, I threw it into ChatGPT. I threw the competencies that we built, and I threw that into, I said, this person wants to get, this is where the person is, and this person where they wants to go. Yeah. Here's their current performance review and feedback from their manager. Help me with all the information that you have. Help me take my notes and curate it in a way that feels palpable and tied back to our competencies and tied back to his role, and also in an action-oriented way. And so it did that. And then I had to take that, and then I had to further tweak and curate. And then I got to like a really good spot. And I even told him, I said, hey, this is what I did, just so you know. And he's like, this is incredible. Like, this is awesome. And I was very honest. Like, I threw a data dump and did this, and I asked ChatGPT, and I tweaked it, and then I gave it to you.
So good. There's a really great practical way, that you can apply AI to something like that. And I think that's something you could easily roll out to a lot of leaders as well, right?
Yeah, I think it's what a lot of tools are trying to do, but you can also do it, on your own, kind of, hacky things together, like different tools that you might have. I will say another one that I get a lot, that's actually very timely right now, because Ontario, which is where our company is located in, the province it's located in Canada, is going to go to their full pay transparency, January 1 of 2026. So we, over the last year and some change, have been stair-stepping our pay transparency in the way that we've been treating people, right? People have access to their bands, their comp ratios, they're learning that, they understand that. But now a lot of questions I get is, well, how come, because, everybody talks about their pay now. It's like no longer a secret. How come, let's just use this as an example. I'm a senior developer, but how come you hired this senior developer and they're making this much more money than me? And I've been here for a number of years and I've been in a senior developer role. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not equitable. Okay. Well, so then now that's where, and I would say this question will get easier to answer as a people leader. It's easier for me, but like for my managers, I'm trying to equip them as well, because we're going to be training on this and teaching this, where I have to help people understand, like, in bands, we have sectioned them off in quartiles. You've got, quartile 1, 2, and 3. Quartile 1 is generally for people who are newer into that role, who are building the skills and the competencies of that role. And so you're probably going to be but what you get paid is going to be commensurate with what the market bears for your role at your years of, with the level of experience you bring, and also thinking about where your pay is. Jumping into that and making sure that, like, if you're getting a promotion in there, I want to make sure that you're getting a sizable promotional increase. That's not a 5% increase. That's generally about 10% at minimum. I generally like it to be, depending on where your starting endpoint is. I think the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of factors that go into that decision, and then also there's guardrails. There's a lot of factors, and then there's like that equitable piece as well. Like, right. But then there's also the notion of like, you may be, and this is the part that I struggle with myself. And I'm trying, and I would love to hear your take on this, Matt, is like, yeah, sometimes when you're growing inside of an organization, your pay may not grow as quickly as someone who has come from the outside in, that comes with a level of experience that we could hire, maybe higher up in like our pay band, because they're coming with a level of experience that maybe you don't have, but also and maybe someone that jumps around a lot gets a lot of big pay increases because your market, we do our pay band analysis every year and we do adjust to the market. But then there's also the very real, like we just talked about, is like sometimes we can't pay everybody exactly where the market has gone because of like very real budgetary constraints, because of market conditions, whatever. There's so many factors. So it's like a balancing act, and it's an art and a science. And that is generally a really hard question to answer because there's so many factors at play that I need to help them understand. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. It's super multivariate. And where I see it happen the most is when I'm helping a company embed bands for the first time, and they've kind of made this position, or they've taken this position around where they want to pay from a market perspective. They apply the bands. And look, a real critical step of applying, picking a percentile and things like that is, can we afford it? And often a company will say, well, we need to be paying at, let's just say 75th percentile, because for the kinds of people that we want to hire, it demands that kind of, competitive stance. Now, when it comes to implementing that, and they've got people who are paid closer to 50th, that can be a real bitter pill for that company, especially like you said, a lot of companies I'm working with in particular, they've got a runway. They've got a certain finite amount of time that they can exist for the current cost base before they run out. And so they need to optimize for how can they make sure they're hitting whatever the next funding milestone, they're getting revenue, whatever it might be. And so, often they can't just whack, a lump sum on their payroll bill just to implement these pay bands. But at the same time, they need to be able to pay at that market rate to be able to get the skills and to be able to deliver the product needs. So you're really between a rock and a hard place. And I think for me, the advice I tend to, or the approach I tend to take is like, again, and you mentioned this earlier, like, I think so long as you kind of default to transparency and you help people understand the thought process that you're going through, they tend to understand it and they tend to be comfortable with it because it's part of the greater good. And I think the more you can build that identity with like the company and what you're all here for. So I mean, if they're an earlier employee, they probably have more equity if equity is the thing that you do. So they've got that from an upside perspective. So they already have a vested interest in terms of the longer term benefit of the company. But two is like, just talk to them about what the horizon looks like. So if we can't bring you up to the band that we're hiring you people at, in at right now, what's the horizon by which we're looking to close that? We can't afford to put, $1 million on the payroll bill right now. What we have committed to doing is that over the next 2 or 3 years or whatever it might be, through the compensation review process, we'll look to make, outsized contributions from a market adjustment or something like that just means that we can ease into the impact of having these sorts of things. And the reality is it's just a growing pain of a new or a young or an evolving business, right? Is that these things do change and they do create angst for the company. But I think the last thing you should do is try and hide it, because like you said, everyone talks about pay all the time. Like it's only becoming more and more and more common. And the pay transparency does make that a little challenging to an extent, especially if you're saying, hey, we're taking this position around pay, but you're not adhering to that everywhere. But I think if you can say to people why, and you can give them a reasoning and a justification, and so long as they know that it's not being forgotten about forever, that for me is often enough to say, we really do need to consider the sustainability organization in this. But we also need to be able to do these to be able to ensure our longevity, and we can bring the people and the skills in that are required for us to be able to, hit a milestone or something like that. So I think the more you can sit down and have that conversation, the more it can come from the founder or the CEO, especially, even better. But I tend to find that it's probably the only way, to be honest, know how to deal with those sorts of things. But yeah, it's, I mean, so many companies deal with it. It's the pay inversion is just a common thing, right? And you're right, there's people out there that do, and I've been a beneficiary of this as well, is that changing roles every, 2 or 3 years tends to benefit people more than staying in a company over the long term. So When that's the market that you're hiring from, then you kind of got to play ball to some extent. Otherwise, you're not getting the skills in, you're not hitting your product milestones, and then you're not delivering on your strategy. So that's the missed opportunity.
You know that feeling when comp decisions land on your desk and you're thinking, is this actually competitive? Most people in finance teams are working off data that's already out of date or spread across 5 different spreadsheets. It's painful and it slows you down. That's why I want to tell you about Pave. Pave gives you real-time compensation data from more than 8,300 companies. Not just last year's survey, actual live market signals. So you can make calls with confidence, not guesswork. You can benchmark pay, price roles, manage your ranges, run your merit cycle, and even explain total rewards to employees, all in the same place. No tab hopping, no stitching things together. And they're rolling out new AI tools that take some of the heavy lifting off your plate. Think smarter job matching, faster merit reviews, less admin, and better decisions. If you want to level up how you run comp, check out pave.com. That's PAVE.com. Again, pave.com.
But on the flip, being that I've been someone that has been at company, tend to stay at companies for a long period of time, is there's also beauty in staying at a company for a longer period of time, especially one that's growing. And because you learn a lot about how to build and scale and connect dots and understand how, right? And getting to know the people more. And then the more you get to know the people, then the faster you can run. And there's there's beauty in it because you get a lot more, there's the opportunity to get a lot more growth and development in a lot of different areas and ways that you might not get if you're just jumping every couple of years. Because, it generally takes 3 to 6 months to ramp. And then it takes a bit of it, right? To really, it's taken me a while to get here.
Oh, for sure. But you're seeing the repercussions of what you're building as well. Like when you're in a startup environment, you're constantly building. But I think you have to really be there for a good stint to actually know whether or not the thing you built is working as well, and to be able to test it over multiple cycles and so on. So yeah, 100%. There's something to be said, which I guess just really forces the pressure back on the business to be able to say, well, look, we know we're not paying you at, the rate that we'd like to, but we will by X date, or here's the steps we're taking to close the gap, and kind of going from there. And
you're right. And people, you're very right. I've been in an environment driving pay transparency when there wasn't. And I will tell you the initial response from a lot of my, fellow executives is that's going to cause too much disruption in the business. And I was like, no, what's causing disruption in this business is not having an actual process and a framework and a whole structure around it. And then not talking about how we've built that structure to create equitability and fairness so that we can be more transparent, because everybody's talking about it and they're creating there's a lot of narratives that are false and that are not actually how we operate. And that's actually hurting the business. I would rather move to transparency and train people and field those questions for a finite period of time, and sort of take it on the chin for a little while and bring people along and then have people trust me, than just continue to sort of hide things and have this sort of cloak things that happen behind. I don't like that feeling. Yeah, I would rather, and I think I had to get, my CEO and everybody there. And I think they found that it wasn't so scary, that they probably heard other companies. Because here's the thing, so-and-so company, I'm like, yeah, but what HR leader is that? That's not me. I know what type of HR leader I am and how I want to do this. And I believe in my capability with my team to do this the right way. So you just kind of have to trust. And so I think they now are trusting, because now we're going to our next level of transparency. But that's another question that I know will come up, and we're going to train against that. I talk a lot about this with my own team, but that's one that comes up quite a bit, that I am looking forward to enabling our ICs and our managers to have better conversations around.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of those things where I think, as you were saying that, I was like, it's so easy to assume that every other company is getting this right, and that we're the only ones that are grappling with this. And it's like, every company I've worked in, every company I work with now, no one has it right. And no one has it perfect. And there's some compromise. We set out with this, there's some compromise in some respects. And I think the thing that I always find that default tends to make it easier is just treating people like adults, like you said, and just, the defaulting to trust and saying, look, here's the circumstances. We're making the best of this, of the situation that we're in. Here's the steps and the decisions we've taken to that end. And I think so long as you're clear about that, and then crucially consistent is the other thing, then you'll be fine. It's it's a journey for everyone. No one's got it perfect.
You're spot on. The grass is a little dead everywhere, Matt.
Oh, it definitely is. There's brown
dead grass
patches
you want to play
in everyone's paddock. That is for sure. Yeah.
And that's
Amazing.
okay. It happens.
Yeah, that's it. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. This has been a really crucial one. I think hopefully people have taken that the trust and transparency tends to be a great solve for a lot of these sorts of circumstances. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really good chat.
Yeah, I'm so glad we finally did this. Keep doing what you're doing, Matt. I love learning from you. And like I said, I've paused on my compensation series a little bit because I've been like dabbling more in the AI and innovate that side of things. But it's still the part of the discipline in HR that I'm like most passionate about and most excited about is compensation. So I love what you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you. And you too. I love learning from you from an AI perspective as well. So I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Foundation Series. Make sure to head over to our website to subscribe to the Foundation Series for monthly editions featuring future interviews on startup compensation. In each edition, we'll explore the different strategies, trends, and challenges faced by startups around the world. If you have a burning topic you'd like me to cover or a standout guest that you want to hear from, drop me an email so I can dive deeper into the compensation topics that matter most to you. Join me next time as we continue to uncover the strategies and practices driving success in global tech startups around the world. Thanks for listening.